All right, so like that video pointed out, the majority of intersex people, like I said, don't even know that they were born intersex until later in their lives, often because medical providers who are not trained appropriately to deal with intersex bodies when they see them recommend non-essential and potentially life-threatening surgeries to these children who are born with bodies that don't clearly line up in either the male or female biological characteristic tracks that we looked at in the previous mini lecture. So like I said, the doctors will recommend these surgeries to remove organs or tissues from the intersex people's bodies that those intersex babies would need later on in life to naturally and normally go through puberty and to develop the secondary sex characteristics that they need. And like I mentioned before, there's no research that indicates that these surgeries are necessary. There's no research that indicates that people that are born intersex in any variation are more likely to develop cancer or other excuses that medical providers often use as justification for the non-consensual surgeries that they do on these intersex babies. And if you remember earlier in the semester when we were talking about the sociology of culture, we looked at the practice of female genital cutting, right? And a lot of intersex people use the argument that when doctors or surgeons in the United States are performing these non-consensual surgeries on intersex babies, it's essentially the same thing as female genital cutting. But again, since we are in America, our ethnocentric lens tends to let us think that, oh, well, since it's trained medical providers that are doing these surgeries that they claim are helping the babies, it's a good thing to do. But at the end of the day, it still kind of follows the same track as female genital cutting in other nations, right? These are non-consensual surgeries. These are non-consensual genital mutilations on these infants. And what intersex advocates are strongly encouraging is that when babies are born intersex, medical providers should let them be. They should leave their bodies be and let the intersex individual make the decision later on in life, once they're older, once they're able to advocate on their own behalf, as to whether or not they want to undergo any sort of genital reformation or affirmation surgeries, right? But doing these surgeries with babies when they're born, obviously they can't give consent then. And the reason why doctors feel the pressure to do these surgeries is because, again, we live in a society that is built on this gender binary. We live in this society where there are two different types of bodies, a male body prototype and a female body prototype, and we will do whatever it takes, whether it's surgeries or medicines, etc., to physically conform people's bodies who do not clearly line up in those categories into either A or B, right? And so that's why it becomes problematic. We're forcing people to get these surgeries to alter their bodies just to fit the expectations that we as a society have created on this understanding that sex is only a two-category system, when in reality there can be many variations, and approximately 2% of our population is already born with one of those variations, right? So why do we bother with binaries? Well, if we socially construct both gender and sex, why do you think our society is so determined to limit both gender and sex into two opposite categories? Why don't we just get rid of these binaries? Do we need people to be identified as man and women anymore? Is that still something that's functional or practical for our society today? Well, sociologists would argue different things. Functionalists would say that society as a whole probably wouldn't be able to function if we got rid of the gender binary. And this is kind of based off of what's now becoming somewhat of an archaic argument, because the division of labor, clearly that men went out and provided, women stayed home and took care of the children in the household, doesn't really follow that same trajectory anymore, at least not to the extent that it used to, right? Women are getting educated at higher rates than men today, and they're entering the workforce at comparable rates to men. It is the norm to have a dual earner household these days, instead of just having the male breadwinner, female homemaker stereotype. So the argument that gender serves as a function to help divvy out tasks specifically within family units doesn't really hold its weight. Also, as we see a rise in same-gender couples in society today, if we don't have a man-woman coupling, who does what in that household dynamic? So this functionalist argument that gender distinctions specifically on the gender binary are functional for society as a whole, kind of a flawed argument to begin with. Conflict theorists would argue that gender, specifically the gender binary, is bad in our society because, again, we live in a patriarchal society that privileges men, and therefore, if we have a privileged group, the opposite group, in this case women, automatically gets marginalized and oppressed. This Gender binary distinction here produces systems of inequality that privilege some and marginalize others. And a conflict theorist would argue that if we want to get rid of gender inequality in our society, we would either need to get rid of the idea of the gender binary and expand gender to include more categories beyond just two, and that also that we would need to look at how we are distributing power and privilege according to gender. And it's not included on here, but of course a symbolic interactionist would be very interested in exploring questions such as why do we assign meaning to only two genders in our society? How does gender and the meanings of masculinity and femininity change throughout time and across different cultures? And then also to be interested in exploring what would happen or what is going to happen as our society begins to recognize more genders in our society, because it is getting to that place. A lot of people, as I mentioned in a previous mini lecture, now don't identify as man or woman. People are choosing to identify as gender non-binary or gender fluid. We have a number of people that identify as trans, meaning that they were assigned one sex at birth, but the gender that they come to identify with later in life is different than that they were assigned when they were born. And so as we continue to evolve as a society, gender is a topic that is going to constantly be in motion, constantly be in transition. And it raises a lot of questions for us as sociologists. Mainly, is it still functional for our society to exist on a gender binary? How do inequalities and systems of power get distributed across genders, especially within our binary system? And then also, how do the meanings that we attach to gender change across time and space?